join our Facebook Live that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks. Before we even get started, I want to say thank you to our first responders and to our essential workers for their commitment to our communities, and we're just constantly grateful for their commitment in making sure that we are safe. And our payment back to you all is to make sure that we do everything we can to keep you safe, to keep you, make sure you have the opportunity to go back home to your families. Today, I am extremely excited to have two individuals who I have a great deal of a respect for as a young man in this process. Both of them are this is their names and their spirits and their words and the things that they do in the community all definitely supersedes who they are. Dr. Osgood, who sits on the Broward County School Board, but she's also a reverend at the Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, where we are grateful for her. Listen, it's good to have a spiritual person up there up on the dais. And then we also have Dr. Steve Gavin. Listen, you talking about firecracker. Y'all see the shirt he got on today. He didn't come to play the radio with us today, but Dr. Gavin, who's here, who is a fierce leader on the Miami-Dade County School Board, and both of them are the vice chair. And I want you all to realize this, that even having these two individuals on here, where we have two African Americans who serve in leadership positions on the school board, and I think it's amazing. I'm happy to call both of you my friend, and I'm happy that that we will have this discussion today. And just so everyone who are watching, if you could do us a favor, if you can share this, because this conversation is going to go far beyond just talking about public schools today, because we have some current events that have occurred again in this country, and I think it would be malpractice if we don't speak about it with the two individuals who we have on here. So I'm going to be quiet, and because I want to hear from them, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves first, and then we're going to get into the conversation of talking about where our public schools are. That's our first topic, whether our public schools are currently right now when it comes to COVID. And I think we'll start with Dr. Osgood. It's all yours, Dr. Osgood.
Thank you, and thank you, Rep. Jones, for your leadership and the hard work that you do for us in Tallahassee. You have continued to be a champion for many communities. I personally thank you for the work you've done for Mentoring Tomorrow's Leaders, 5,000 Role Models, where you continue to fight the fight in Tallahassee for our children on a number of issues, sounding alarm and standing flat-footed and demanding that we get our equal share of funding, making sure that our issues are brought to the forefront. And you excite me because you are a younger person, and to be involved in the political process and getting the results that you have gotten is tremendous. You are certainly a role model for other young people in the work that you do. So I'm Dr. Rosalind Osgood. I am the District 5 School Board member in Broward County and Vice Chair of the Broward County School Board. A graduate of Fort Lauderdale High School, attended Florida A&M, a proud product of the 33311. Shout out to Rep. DuBose and Senator Thurston. We all from the right hood. Commissioner Brian Johnson, yeah, we right from the right hood together. And I am delighted to be here in the company today with two brothers that I hold in high esteem, two young men that my sons actually look up to as role models. So thank you for having us today, Rep. Jones.
Thank you so much, Dr. Osgood. I appreciate you. Dr. Steve Gavin.
Good afternoon. I want to echo the sentiments of my colleague, my sister, and my fellow fighter for children in our community. We're cut from the same cloth, Dr. Rosalind Osgood. I'm just blessed, brother, to be able to share this platform with you, but also especially with her once again. We do share the same sentiments relative to advocacy, education, equity, equality, and opportunity for underserved communities, and specifically Black folk and communities of color. I too want to share my sentiments to you for your leadership at the state level and the community level. And I just heard, ironically, we are sitting here with 3 rattlers from the highest of 7 hills, Florida A&M University. So I know I'm in great company today as it relates to these particular issues. You have represented 3 promises that I made to the community, to the people that elected me. Didn't make a whole lot, I made 3. I made promises that I would stand, I would speak, and if need be, I would fight. And I think you've epitomized that in your time. You've stood, you've spoken, and at times you've fought the good fight on issues that are relevant to our children and issues that are relevant to our community. Again, I am Dr. Steve Gavin III, a product of Liberty City, Miami's own Liberty City, graduate of Miami Northwestern Senior High School. Had the pleasure of spending the past 30 years in education as a classroom teacher, elementary principal, high school principal, superintendent of schools, and now the proud elected school board for District 1 and the current vice chair. So I'm looking forward to a very robust, very frank, very courageous conversation around critical issues that face not only our children, but as we have seen recently, issues that perplex people of color, specifically Black men. I think we, yes, have not only a duty, but we have an obligation to lean strongly in those issues for people who rely on our presence, but more importantly, our voice.
I appreciate that, Dr. Gallon. So let's get to it. So we are, as we look at the state is moving into this entire quote unquote post COVID-19 era, which we know is not post COVID-19 because it's very clear that COVID will linger even after things start opening up, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I would love for us to start talking about our children who are home right now and parents who are wondering what's next for my child, what's next for me, what's next for the school district. I did see a parent post yesterday when I advertised that we were having this conversation. She asked, when are schools going to open up? Will it be earlier? Will it be late? So I guess we could start with both districts, just kind of giving this overview of where we stand in the district with as far as opening up for students. So we can start with you, Dr. Gavin.
Yes, one of the things that the parents can expect, and we've been very, very clear relative to our position on what we've done at this particular time. Yes, our school buildings are closed, but education has continued. We provided educational opportunities for our students through a technology-based platform, through distance learning. So I often say schools did not close on March 16th. Our buildings did, but our educational programs continued. We're going to continue those throughout the summer, and we're definitely going to continue those as we prepare for the 2021 school year. At the last school board meeting, we made a formal declaration that we are planning to have schools resume. And what phase that looks like, it's not one size fits all. So although we made that declaration, we are making that declaration without an imposition. A declaration without an imposition. So we're going to declare that we're going to have schools, but we're not going to impose any particular structure on parents. If a parent is not comfortable with his or her child returning to the physical setting, we understand that. We're going to support that, and we're going to provide an opportunity for that learning to continue. Conversely, if you have parents who have to work and really have come to rely on the public school system as that place of sustainability, reliability, and dependability, we are there to serve them in a very safe and complicit manner relative to the CDC guidelines, the directives that come from the governor's office, and that of the Commissioner of Education. So we understand that it's not going to be a one size fits all. So with our declaration, we plan to open schools, but we're not going to impose any one size fits all. So we're going to tailor the continued educational program to meet the needs of our parents, our families, but most importantly, our children, with respect to keeping safety first. So you'll have a physical setting, you'll have a distance learning setting, or you may have a combination of the two.
I'm happy. We're gonna come back to that. I'll ask you a question on that, Dr. Gallon. Dr. Osgood.
Thank you, and I echo the comments of my colleagues, and we realize that we're in a difficult time. COVID-19 has changed the trajectory of education. It will never be the same. I must give a plug for my kids, because young people have been telling us that technology and virtual learning and doing things online and via technology is the way to go. While we've been saying to them, get off your phones, sign off, don't put that phone down. So now we get it. We're young people, you were right. Everything is virtual. We have to understand technology. So in Broward, we're having a workshop on June 16th. It's a school board workshop where we will spend a lot of time discussing what school is going to look like in some type of hybrid form. We know that we will offer opportunities for virtual learning through all of our campuses because we've heard from many parents who are just not going to send their children back to school until there is some type of vaccine or some clearance from the Center for Disease Control. They don't have a lot of faith in the poison propaganda that the president has been pushing to us. So they want to keep children safe, and we want to give them an option. If they want to keep students home, they're able to keep students home. We know that we're going to have to restructure and modify the way that we do transportation. We can no longer put 45 or 50 kids on a bus at the same time. So we're going to have to restructure that. We're going to have to think about cafeteria time and lunch time and work to have some means of social distance for those students who are going to return to a facility that will come physically to the facility, as well as provide educational opportunities for those students that are not, as well as staff. When we have this conversation about education, we both serve on school districts that are large school districts where we are normally the largest employer in our county. So we're going to have to make accommodations for staff that have medical conditions that put them at high risk, where we may have to provide opportunities for teachers to teach from home that need to do so, and other staff persons that we will need to accommodate. So we are planning to open in the fall, and we're planning to open, and as Dr. Gavin said, offer a variety of opportunities and educational opportunities so that our parents and students are safety first. Our model is going to be a little different because opening in the fall, we're going to focus on mental health first. So our model will be a mental health and social emotional learning health model. The first 2 weeks of school, and I know this is probably not good for a school board member to say, but we're not going to focus a lot on academics. We need to make sure that everybody is mentally okay. COVID-19 has really impacted our community. Many people have recovered from COVID. Some people have lost loved ones, whether it's their loved one in their family or neighbors. Parents have lost jobs that have caused stress. Many of our children have, not been able to socially and physically engage with friends and teachers and family members that they found on school campuses. So we're going to spend the first 2 weeks making sure that we focus on mental health and that we have counseling and opportunities for our students and our staff to talk about what they've experienced, to make sure that we're heading in a positive way, and to make sure that someone is not suffering silently and we miss them.
Dr. Osgood, and to Dr. Gavin, both of you all bring up a good point, and one of the points that you all bring up is about the mixed setting of learning or the hybrid learning. Because I see both districts are looking at. Dr. Gavin, you may mention that if you want to work at home, you can work at home, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Or if you want to do distance learning, you can do distance learning in the classroom. You can do that. How does that look for a parent when they start trying to make these decisions on what makes sense for them? Are the districts looking to guide parents in making that perfect decision? Or are you going to leave that up to them? And either one of you could answer how you are.
Excellent question. I heard my colleague, Dr. Osgood, she referenced we, and I want to clarify our we often is thought of as the Miami-Dade County Public School Board, our superintendent, our employees. But in this particular process, when we're talking about families, when we're talking about children, they are a part of that we. So the initial body of work is that we conducted, and we're still conducting, a parent survey. So we want to hear from the parents. We don't want to make any assumptions. We want them to give us feedback relative to their apprehensions, relative to their interests, and relative to their needs. So first and foremost, we want to hear from the parents as it relates to what would they like to see in their personal readiness for their children to come back to school. Secondly, we've amplified the landscape of that week. We've established a working group that will be comprised of community stakeholders with significant background in the medical field. Although we have leadership in Washington that may not believe in science and data, in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, we do. So we want to leave it to some of the medical experts to lean in on this issue. So that working group will also provide some thoughts, some recommendations, and some frameworks for us to contemplate with respect to safety first. Each board member has a representative that they'll be appointing. I'm very proud of my appointee, Dr. Linda Brown, who will be representing District 1. So that is going to be a working group that is going to provide us some feedback relative to medical and health-related considerations. So the district, the board, the administration, our parents, and our community stakeholders will help to frame what that particular situation looked like. So to answer your question in sum, it's going to look differently for some parents. One parent may want to be totally committed to virtual learning. We'll have to provide an opportunity for that. We gave out over 100,000 devices, of which we do not plan to collect any of them. We want to continue that opportunity throughout. Again, a working parent may want us to ensure that a classroom, school, cafeteria, bus environment is safe, is in compliance with the CDC guidelines, because they need to go to work. And they need somebody to provide that continuity for their children. So again, we're going to get that feedback and we're going to accommodate them accordingly.
Yeah, to piggyback off what my colleague said, you know, as an elected official, and you know this, Rep. Jones, we're only as effective as the people help us to be. So to parents, you have to communicate your needs. We're also doing a parent survey, but we're also always available. Dr. Gavin and I have been on several of these talks, and we've given our numbers. We need to know what parents need so that we can best serve them. But it won't be a one-size-fits-all. We will give some type of options. And you know, Dr. Gavin, you're right. When I say we, you know, I live by that whole change motto, children have a need to grow every day. And I believe that it's all of our responsibility to create those opportunities for children to grow, whether you're a business owner, a pastor, a teacher, inside the school or outside the school. We have to prioritize our children to create those opportunities. So parents right now can contact schools. Although our buildings are not physically open, as Dr. Gavin said, we have persons that are taking calls. Some schools have what we call a skeletal staff. If you're looking to register a student for the very first time at a school, you have the capacity to do so now. So although the physical facilities are closed, education and planning for future education in a way that's going to make our children successful is taking place. But we need the engagement. We need the parents to express to us their needs, their concerns. I know I'm thinking right now a lot about the parents that sometimes need to drop the students off at school early or pick them up later, the before school and aftercare school. Those are things that we're going to have to rely on our various partners in the community, the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club. This is a real good opportunity for the community to come in line with the school board to help us address this issue by expanding our arms. We're going to be limited. And I can tell you, I am afraid to death about funding, because we know that if the federal government does not kick in, it could be a major catastrophe for us. On the low end, about a $35 million deficit. On the high end, about a $100 million deficit. So parents are going to also have to help us call their congresspersons to advocate and make sure that more of this stimulus money is directed toward education. And look, I'm for supporting businesses, I'm for supporting nonprofits and churches, but I must be honest with you, as a mother, as a school board member, I'm biased when it comes to children. So a lot of the changes that we're going to need to make is going to cost funding, it's going to cost money to do so, and it's going to put even a greater hardship on the limited funding that we already have.
Well, I really appreciate you both. And for those who are watching, you just tuned in, you're listening to Dr. Rosalind Osgood, Dr. Steve Gavin, Dr. Osgood with Broward County School Board, Dr. Gavin with Miami-Dade County School Board. You both are popular because you all have this room packed in today. So I'm happy to have both of them on here today. But let's talk about the where we are as a school district when it comes to equity during COVID. We know this is something that we speak about often, and so often people think equality is equity, and they're two different things. And Dr. Galley, you put that on the table when we had the education town hall not too long ago. But how has COVID made this a real issue when we look at the equity of education?
I think, and I've been consistent in my remarks, and I want to be consistent today. I say all of the time in my discourse relative to equity, and quite frankly, you're correct, not equality. Equality was a challenge of the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, and potentially the 70s. Then we transitioned into the 80s, a nation at risk, no child left behind, and now we start to understand the issue is not giving our children in certain communities the same because of historical deprivations of inequality. They need more. So equity is an issue about, don't give me what you're giving everybody else, give me what I need. Give me what I need. And what I've said is that during these particular times when things are bad in communities, when things are bad across the state, when things are bad across this country, things are worse for certain communities, specifically communities of color, communities of poverty, and in most cases, it's acutely reflected in the Black community. So I like to make that distinction very often because communities of color sometimes get shaded and Black folk get lost in that particular discourse. There's a major distinction between being a person of color and being Black. And I'm very, very clear about that. So what this has shown is once again that those inequities manifest themselves in terms of access to technology, in terms of what is happening in the home with single parents, with grandparents, with siblings, what happens relative to undocumented immigrants. That's a whole nother issue of equity in terms of access and understanding how to navigate the bureaucracy. So as things are bad for all of us, we are very, very clear that things are extremely worse. And as a result, we want to develop a strategy, and we're committed to a strategy around this issue of equity. So our first disbursement of technology devices was to underserved communities. Our commitment as it relates to food insecurity speaks to an item that I did in 2017 on the heels of Hurricane Irma, where we took a policy position that anytime there are mandatory school closures, we're going to feed our children. You know, that item wasn't designed for children in Coral Gables or Pinecrest or Doral, although they have access to it. We're talking about those children in those communities that represent that 75+% of children who are on free and reduced lunch. And had it not been for school, they don't have breakfast, they don't have a snack, they don't have lunch, they don't have that stability. And when we shut down our schools, we shut down their access to nourishment, their access to food, their access to what Maslow calls the basic need of every human being, and that is to be fed, sheltered, and loved. So we understood that, and we lean very strongly into that with our technology commitment. We're also going to lean into that with our strategy relative to our academic program. So our program for the summer is going to target the lowest 25% of our student population. We've had a discourse, and I know my colleague will talk about it as well. We know historically, and you do too, State Representative, as an educator, the summer slide, that our children don't necessarily flatline in education, they regress, they go backwards. So you lose what you've already acquired. So it's not that you don't gain, you actually lose. So we have to mitigate and abate that particular conundrum with a very targeted, deliberate, and unapologetic strategy to say that we're going to address our academic program for the least, the last, and the lost. And we're going to do it unapologetically.
Let me, Dr. Osgood, I want to, because I know you're going to talk about this because Dr. Gallon just made mention of the summer slump. It's no longer just a summer slump, it's the COVID slump now. So Dr. Osgood, we're dealing with both of them. How will we gain with the 5 months of lost instruction? Dr. Osgood, as you speak, and I'm sure Dr. Gallagher can come in after, can you all speak on what parents and what teachers are going to have to do to ensure that the gains of children that have been lost, how do we get that back?
So, Rep. Jones, as I said earlier, it is all of our responsibility to make sure that our children, our students stay engaged. Normally in a traditional school year, we lose students get behind, and we have different program and mechanisms and ways to catch them up. Now, we were given, some say, a pass this year where a lot of the grading criteria was waived because of COVID. But we know that that is going to impact our grading next year, because we're going to have to work real hard with summer school and other things to try to help our students. One of the things that I know in my district, District 5, we have some phenomenal people, teachers and principals that work in schools. So they are working to do different things to target those students that they know were already behind, to have virtual learning opportunities. We use something called Canvas in Broward County. And Canvas is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you have access to learning and information. I'm also a proud member of the historic New Mount Olive Baptist Church that's been serving the city of Fort Lauderdale for 100 years. In our church, we have something called the Community Education Alliance, which is focused on education. So during Sunday school time, students have to read books. It's very connected. It's targeted towards 7 schools that are in District 5, but it's very connected to what we're doing in the school system to help stretch our arms. And so I think that our models, as we're working, Dr. Gellin and I, the superintendents, those persons that work in education, we're gonna have to level up in our community. Y'all know I'm a millennial born in the wrong generation, so I use certain terms. We're gonna have to level up in our relationship with our community partners to get them to help us make up some of this ground. So we should be talking to churches about ways that they could help us through Sunday school lessons and engagement with the pastors, just reminding the students, you know, did you read that book over the summer? The parents need to have our students engaged in learning. Now that they have the device, and we gave out 100,000+ devices, and we gave them to every student. So if a student had, you know, a family had 3 students, every student got a device. They did the same thing in Dade County. So now our students have actually been helped in that way because they have those devices. So as parents are thinking about school and going back to school, I'm gonna just ask the parents to think about ways that you can invest in the children's education. For example, if you're gonna buy, you know, you have 2 kids, you're gonna buy each one of them a pair of LeBrons, that's about $400. Think about buying some software, something to help them learn how to read better, how to write better. Take that money and invest it in something that's gonna build their intellectual capacity. Those shoes gonna be too small in a couple of months, and then they're gonna want the next thing that come out. But as a community, we're gonna have to work to, first of all, identify those kids. Graduation time. You know, I know in some of my schools, I've had to look for a few kids to make sure that they get across this stage. You know, we've worked really hard to get them to this point. We have to just be real as we talk about our kids, because these are our babies. And whatever we have to do to keep them on that positive trajectory, we have to do that. Sometimes their home environment is not the best environment because we had the war on drugs, and now we got the war on Black men going to an all-time high. And it's really impacting our families in a certain way that we have to step up and help support our single families. You know, a lot of times I hear people, Dr. Gellin, talk about how parents in underprivileged neighborhoods are not engaged in the school process. Well, if I have 3 babies and I'm working 2 jobs, that hour or 2 that I have to take that nap, I gotta make a decision. I would love to be able to come to the school, participate in PTA, but I'm trying to survive. So as people of color, we were already just trying to survive. Now we got the COVID pandemic, and the COVID pandemic has changed its face, because at first it was a pandemic and it was alarm and everybody needs to stay in. And then the numbers started showing that more African Americans were dying, and then they wanted everybody to come out. So we have to see what's not being said in our communities and do what we need to do, first of all, to keep our kids safe and to prioritize education. You know, I know Shevrin, I know your parents very well. Your mother is my soror. She's a member of that prestigious
She's watching too.
Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And think about how they prioritize education. Think about what they would make us do to get our book lessons. You know, you couldn't go outside and play unless you had that homework done. Certain things you weren't allowed to do. And a lot of them did not have, I was raised by grandparents with a 3rd grade and a 7th grade education, but they prioritized education for me because they knew that it was the equalizer, it was the game changer. So we need the community to be up in arms about educating our children and trying to help them not just survive. That's a word that we've been given by folk that I believe keep us oppressed. We tired of surviving. We have to thrive. Many of us have been thriving. We have to make sure that others of us are thriving during these hard and difficult times.
Well, Dr. Osgood, you started the conversation, so I'm about to go there. Now, we have right now, and both of you who, again, I have a great deal of respect for, and you both sit on the school board, which is two of the largest in the state of Florida and also in the country. We are dealing with a real issue when it comes to our Black men and brown men in certain instances who are being targeted. And I think it would be malpractice if I don't bring this up to you all and ask, as school board members, what responsibility do you have when it comes to us in the community in protecting our Black men and boys?
I think I was going to weigh in on what Dr. Osgood said. Yes, we definitely have an obligation as school board members. We have an obligation as elected officials. But as Dr. Osgood mentioned, relative to the pandemic that we're facing right now, and many of the issues that our children are facing, our families are facing, the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, the Broward County Schools, we cannot be the panacea for all of the ills and vices in our community. And historically, in communities of color, in the Black community, communities of poverty, one institution was not the panacea. So it was the church, it was the home, it was the school, it was the community organizations. And if one fell short, the other one stepped up. If one was not able to fill the gap, the other one did. If your parents were not educated, somebody at the church who was stepped in and reinforced that. The neighbor across the street. We are seeing some of that right now as it relates to the pandemic, and I agree with Dr. Osgood. We would be remiss if we did not acknowledge, but also continue to challenge our community-based organizations that have stepped up big time in terms of providing leadership, support, and services to our children, because the school system cannot do it alone. Yes, we're committed to education. That is our core mission. But in that core mission, we understand that we have to educate the whole child. But we understand that to educate the whole child, you have to make sure that the family is safe, that the community is safe, that the resources are provided. And some of those extend outside of the reach of the school system, but we are what I consider the point guard. We can serve as the point guard on the basketball court of justice in terms of making sure that everybody plays their role, make the baskets for our children, our families, and our community. As it relates to that particular question, Representative Jones, the first thing we have to do is we have to be transparent. We have to be honest. We can't play the Mickey Mouse games and try to avoid the much needed courageous conversation around disparities, around social justice, and quite frankly, issues around racism. I had a monologue at a school board meeting that did get some traction on YouTube, and I called it I Am the Narrative, a courageous conversation around disparities. And this was born out of a report that basically revealed that in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, although we're very, very proud of our accomplishments, we're a top-rated school district in this nation, in this community, A-rated district, and have an outstanding board, an outstanding superintendent, outstanding employees, but we are definitely not a utopic organization. We're an organization that reflects the ills, the challenges, the vices, the obstacles, but also the opportunities of the greater community. And within the greater community, those obstacles, those opportunities, those ills, and those vices are often reflected in what we not like to kindly call implicit bias, or what I boldly call racism. So racism doesn't stop at the schoolhouse doors. And it came out in a set of data that showed that although Blacks represented about 25+% of the population of Miami-Dade County Public Schools, they represented over 50+% of the students that were arrested. In God we trust, all others bring data. And the data spoke very, very loudly as it relates to the disparity in terms of how children of color, but specifically Black children, because the demographics are broken down, white, Hispanic, and Black. So we just have to have that conversation. We're not talking about children in communities of color. We're talking about Black children. So what we have to do, we have to be bold, we have to be courageous, and our board took a very strong affirmative policy position. I want to punctuate that. Policy position. We amplified a policy position of which I was very, very proud to facilitate its proffering, that our data points prospectively will provide data relative to the arrest of students based on ethnicity, gender, et cetera, because it was not really presented that way, and that on an annual basis, we'll look at that data in a very reflective, but also prospective way. Secondly, as relates to the academic achievement gaps, we need to have a conversation when we're talking about third grade student performance data. We need to look very closely at how many of those third grade students are Black men, Black boys. And that right now, we understand that that retention rate helps to perpetuate dropout. Dropout helps perpetuate a life of crime. And a life of crime gives our young Black boys one of three options: prison, poverty, or an early death. So we have to look at the onset, the data points that are going to give us some indication as relates to what pathway our children are on based on their academic deprivation, based on the societal implications that prevent them from being successful. And in recognizing that data, we have to develop not a one-size-fits-all, but a very strategic, deliberate strategy tailored to what those children need, but quite frankly, being very honest and leaning into our truth. And that's what I think we have to do. And we can't do it alone. We have to do it together.
Thank you,
Thank you, Dr. Gellin. And I agree with everything you said and what we need to do in education to support our kids. But let me just be clear. You know, as an African-American woman, you know, over the years, well, most of my young life, we've had, you know, different depictions on TV of Black women, whether it was Florence on the Jeffersons, who was an angry housemaid. Lord knows whether it was Esther with Fred, she was some, I don't know where, my goodness, whether it was Esther Roll, but it's been this whole angry Black woman depiction. You know, now we got Madea, you know, depict. So let me just be clear. As a African-American woman, I am angry. I am mad. I am angry. I'm very upset about the war on Black men. The war on Black men wears me out as a Black woman because it forces me to have to play roles and do things that God didn't create me to have. First, we had the war on drugs that locked up a lot of our people who had mental health issues that were struggling to survive with the pressures of life. Now, as a Black man, you can be killed for just being Black. I have two very handsome sons, very clean cut. Now I have to worry if my son leave the house. You know, I used to have a conversation and say, you know, don't stay out too late. Now, anytime he leaves the house, I got to be concerned about him being targeted, not just by police officers, by people riding around with guns, looking for Black people that's just, Black men that's just jogging and devaluing their life in such a way that they think they could take their lives, have their friends tape it like it's a trophy and brag about it. And we are too silent. We're not sounding the alarm. We're not outraged in the way we needed to be outraged. When I saw the video this morning for the first time with Mr. Floyd, it pushed me to tears. It made me angry. And just thank God I've been in the church long enough and God has dealt with my soul and heart that my immediate response was to go in prayer. And I find myself having one of those Habakkuk moments. How long, Lord? How many more Black men gotta die? How many more Black kids gotta see people that look like them killed with somebody's foot? What if you don't understand that I can't breathe? If you grab me and I tell you I can't breathe, the normal person gonna let you go. no matter what's going on? How do you continue to cowardly put your foot on somebody's neck because you devalue their life? And I think when we look at this whole systemic issue of racism, it allows people to devalue us as human beings. And if I devalue you as a human being, I don't think you have the right to education. I consider you lazy, you don't work, you always want to get by. I condition my mind to form an opinion or perspective of you that I don't even think you worthy of grace. So as we're working with our kids in school, we got to have the conversation about the real life realities of what they living in every day, where they're seeing their uncles killed, they're seeing people that look like them murdered, people that look like them, people that they can trust turning against them and killing them. And we are too quiet. We're not sounding the alarm and talking. I started texting Ben Crump right away this morning. We need to be marching. We need to be, enough is enough. This war on Black men, think about it. It was a war on drugs. Then it was, you get stopped by the police, you misbehave, and then you end up in a situation. Now it's just anything go. You could just be killed for being out in your street corner for just being a Black man. And as a Black woman, it forces me to have a family structure that's not in line the way that God divined the family structure. I have Black boys. I can't teach them how to be men. I need Black men alive. I'm trying to graduate strong Black men, like my mentor, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, has the 5,000 role models, because she said all these beautiful Black girls need husbands. So she's trying to raise up these Black boys or put them on a trajectory that they can be good husbands. As a school board member, I have to speak about these issues. You ask me how I protect Black children, open up my mouth and speak truth to power about issues, so the children don't have to take it in their own hand. So they know that they have not just been left out to die, that they know that we see them, listen to them. Some of our kids are real angry about what they see. And it puts us in a dichotomy. How do I say to a child, the police is supposed to protect you and love you? How do I say, don't be racist or angry against people because of the color of their skin, and then they're mistreated by people that have that color of skin, and then they're mishandled by the police? So now, not only are they trying to learn to read and write, they have a whole nother strategy that they're fighting a force outside. And a lot of times, mom or dad is not there. Nobody's sounding the alarm about what's going on with girls right now. Women are being arrested, both Black and white women are being arrested at a more alarming rate than ever before. I'll be doing a forum in June on the state of women. Somebody say, well, why are you not just doing the state of Black women? I'm looking at all women, because there's some significant data around what's happening with women. We're committing suicide. We're getting all these health disparities. Why? Because we're worn out. And as a Black woman, because our Black men are being targeted with the pressures of this. We're in a difficult time right now, Rep. Jones, but the good news is that we know that there is a power stronger than all of us that gives us what we need to get through these times. So we gotta pray, but faith without work is dead. We gotta start by marching. We gotta start by teaching our children the truth about racism, and we gotta talk about it. And we gotta talk to people that don't look like us about racism and ask them to be accountable and stand up. If we are religious people, I'm a Christian, unapologetically, and it bothers me that my white Christian brothers and sisters are not sounding the alarm about this issue of this war on Black men. And we supposed to have the same God or the same Jesus that we're serving. I don't get that. So I'm mad. I'm an angry Black woman when you launch a war on Black men. Black women will fight for Black men and Black children every day.
And Representative Jones, I would dare not
take it.
follow that passion that was reflected there, but I'm usually not an emotional person, and I'm a person that has grown up in Liberty City, and I've seen my share of Black men shot down by other Black men. I've seen the ramifications of Arthur McDuffie born out of the 80 riots. I've seen the issues with Neville Johnson. But for the first time in my 51 years, I had an opportunity to watch on video the killing, the murder, the life oozing out of a Black man from under the neck of a apathetic, dismissive, coward person. And what perplexed me was the 42-year-old man's 2 words. His 2 words were mama, mama. And what I say to that is that provided a snapshot to America of what you and I and legions of brothers like us have seen for centuries. That just gave people an opportunity of what we see through these eyes as Black men every day, knowing that my experience, my education, my credentials, my titles will not make me immune from the sting, the pernicious pain and puncture of racism, being a Black man in America today. And Tupac said he saw no changes. And I just gave you the chronology of Arthur McDuffie, who got beat down in Miami. We all know what happened to Rodney King on video before we had the plethora of cell phones taking video. That was a wake-up call. So we thought. And he lived, but he was beaten like a dog in California. And over 3 decades later, here we stand within weeks, 2 Black brothers, one determined innocent, other innocent until proven guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. But whatever he did, it didn't warrant a death sentence. And it didn't warrant what people who are on death row get. And that was cruel and unusual punishment. But what it did, it opened up the eyes to America for the first time for me to be able to witness that. Painfully, slowly, the murdering of a Black man on video in broad daylight. And again, this is what we faced for the majority, if not all, of our lives as Black men.
So, so Dr. Gavin, the answer to Dr. Osgood, I mean, yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm in tears because Dr. Gavin, you walked us through, you know, what we're experiencing, and I want you both to continue speaking, but I started crying because I have 6 nephews, and I understand I don't have children of my own yet, but I look at the fight that the 3 of us, when we're out there, so many people think it's a show or we're doing it because we want to be seen, not realizing that we've actually been called to this moment and to this movement to do what we're doing. And to do it because we know for a fact that when we leave this earth, we want to make sure that we've done all we can to make this better for your children, your sons, my nephews. But the question I have is, and I can't seem to answer it, how did we get here? How do we get out of this? And then once we get out of this, what's our plan, our agenda?
I think we get out of this one child, one home, one community, one block, one city, one state at a time. How do we get here? We're talking about trying to mitigate and abate over 400 years of a journey that brought us here. So we know how we got here. We got here against our will. We got here being declared less than a human being. We got here through horrific conditions that devalued us as human beings and determined us to be property. We got here through the Middle Passage. We got here through slavery, through Jim Crow, through every unimaginable horror that a human being can face. And I always say it's unimaginable because it was not very episodic. Sometimes your challenge can be episodic and you can get through it. Ours has not been a sprint. It's been a marathon. It's not been a sprint of suffering. It's been a marathon of pain and suffering and ability to overcome. But how do we get out of this? How we've been able to survive, and in the words of my sister, how in many cases we've been able to thrive. See, remember, she mentioned juxtaposed survive versus thriving. We weren't even supposed to survive. We weren't supposed to survive. So I think we continue to persevere as one community, starting with praying to a loving, believing, and all-seeing and God who won't forsake us because he has not, but also starting in our homes, with our families, on our blocks, in our communities, with our children, and again, with our leaders, and doing it in a collective manner. And also understanding that our ability to rise and to succeed and to survive and to thrive wasn't exclusively predicated on our own individual efforts as Black folk, because there were a lot of other people that didn't look like us that took that journey with us. And we have to be that willing to have that level of inclusiveness, and they have to have that level of empathy to understand that there's only one experience, and that's the one we have, but they can share it in terms of our struggle and our ability to fight against it. So it resonated with me with what Dr. Osgood said, for people to make certain declarations about being concerned, being committed to being caring and being Christ-like, but being silent. I'll add another C, their silence make them complicit in the attack, in the murder, in the degradation, in the deprivation of people of color, people of poverty, and as I often say, irrespective of color, the least, the last, and the lost, but too often, the least, the last, and the lost represent those people who are Black.
You know, Rep. Jones, as I hear you say how we survive, and we thrive together. And when I say together, together has to be different. It can't just be the same three of us. It can't be those of us that's just from the same hood talking about what we've been talking about. We have to start having meetings and having conversations with people who don't look like us. I have Miss Lori Rich Levinson on the school board, someone I love dearly, who is Jewish, who understands some of the pains of having, just because of you're Jew, having the hate spew against you, the constant, hate crimes that is permeated against Jews, and you see these different things happen, and then they're swept under the rug also. So having that conversation, just how we have pushed for diversity and inclusion, I think as leaders, we have to begin to set the table differently, where we intentionally invite other people to the table to have this discussion, to hear our pain. Sometimes they don't know. Not all people are white people or racist or bad people. We have some good white brothers and sisters that are committed, but they don't know how to help us champion this cause. Sometimes they're walking on eggshells because they don't want to say the wrong thing, or get the wrong response. I have a couple of white friends, I tell them, no matter what you hear us say, don't ever use the N-word. You could never, ever use the N-word. So some of it is cultural training, but it's also inclusivity at a way where when
Did we lose Dr. Osgood?
We lost her voice.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, every public servant take an oath. We all say that we believe in this Constitution, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. And it goes on and on and on. So we have to bring people that and demand that America makes good the promise of her Constitution. Now it's just a lie, but we let people off the hook. We we share rooms and dinner tables with a lot of people, but we're so busy trying to fit in, we don't raise these conversations. They call us for video after video after video, but they're not directing resources to our community to address equity issues, to talk about racism, to sound the alarm about these kinds of things. So I think that as leaders, we have to begin to do something different. That was what I was convicted of. After I came out of prayer this morning, what am I going to do differently? I can't just sit by and see this war on Black men continue to go to the next level and the next level and not try to engage and do something about it. And then the second thing is we got to get more people that are people of compassion, people that care about all people into office to change policies, to change systematic racism and structures that are designed against one group or the other. We gotta get them engaged in the process to do that. And when people start doing that, they get attacked. They get their past brought up. They get smeared, and that bite people up because they can't take the pressure. But it's worth taking the hit from. Ain't none of us perfect. It's worth taking a hit to change our community. I remember when I ran the first time, I had a whole bunch of stuff put out about my past because I had been on drugs, 2 felony convictions, and I own my truth. But I'm able to relate to families and people that are struggling with substance abuse and drug addiction because of what I've gone through. And I'm able to challenge them as well because those things are just obstacles. You can overcome those obstacles with the help of the community and the willingness to just change some of your behavior. So I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm in a lot of pain right now. I feel so powerless, but I have hope because I think about those brave Black women, you know, Harriet Tubman, those brave Black women like my grandmother, Agnes Wade, those brave Black men that stood the course of time and demanded, some of them even died so that things could change. Dr. King gave his life as a young person. He was killed talking about this very moment. He was so prophetic, talking about this very moment right now that we're living in. So we have to continue this fight, as painful as it gets sometimes. You feel like your work is in vain, that you're trying to get kids across the stage, but you're losing so many of them along the way. But we have to take a leadership role and to begin to invite others to the table to have this conversation about this war on Black men that's literally destroying the Black community in our family structure.
Wow. Dr. Well, as we have a few minutes left, I guess I want to ask you both, do you have hope that we make it out of this in this current climate that we're in? I know you do, but how can you transfer that you have to other people?
My contention, as Dr. Osgood mentioned, I always tell people, and my life has reflected that, my journey has reflected that, having come out of Liberty City, been to the professional mountaintop, but have had my share of valleys, is that God has proven. I have the receipts in my life. I have the receipts. I have the scars.
Yes,
I have the medals that it's not about going to it, it's going through it. And we're going to get through this. And that journey will continue. So what we have to do is maintain that evidence, have that faith. And I'm not talking pie in the sky. I'm talking about a perspective from a person who has done some things, seen some things, and been through some things. And that's why Dr. Osgood and I have a special type of a relationship. We don't have enough time to even start. Maybe that's a whole nother topic later on to talk about what we've been through and what God has brought us through. But we understand that process continues, that is by no stretch of the imagination a destination to which we have individually arrived, but it's a journey upon which we continue so that all of us can collectively achieve and can collectively rise. We've been successful in our own individual personal right, but we understand through our own personal journeys, our own personal struggles, our own personal missteps and setbacks and our obstacles, but also opportunities, that we have an obligation to others. We have an obligation. We have a God-given obligation to reach back, grab one, and continue to fight, speak, and stand And for me, I'm going to run on and see what the end goal be.
I know that's right. And Dr. Osgood, we take us on home, Dr. Osgood.
Yeah, you know, the hope is in making the world a better place for our children. You know, I know that God has the power to fix all of these things. I keep saying, God, what are you teaching us through this process? I really believe that God is going to show himself strong and mighty. You know, I was reminded this morning also of the Apostle Paul as he was in the Roman jail. And he writes to the church at Philippi. He says to them, with your prayers and through the Spirit of God, you know, I'm going to be okay one way or the other, if I live or if I die. And at times like these, it is our faith, it is our history. When we look back how God has brought us and kept us, we look back how Dr. Gavin said we were put on the bus on the ship in the middle passage and brought over here. The women and men separated the women and the men so that they could rape the women, you know, without any type of hesitation ongoingly as they brought them over here to mess up their minds, to beat the black man, to break him. And we survived as a people. We are still here. Our Haitian brothers and sisters started revolting against slavery, and eventually it just broke out everywhere. And we're still here. So I'm convinced that we are a people that with the power of God, we are able to stay the course, that we are sustained. But I don't want my 4-month-old grandbaby, little Gabe, to have to be going through this. Now, you know, he can't even go outside. And think about COVID. Now we got to wear masks. So that just makes y'all as black men even a bigger target. So my hope is in God. My hope is in community. I've seen what we can do when we come together. We came together as a community and we got justice for DeLuca Road. We've come together for others to sound our voices. So my hope is in God, my hope is in community, and my hope is that whatever God has put on the inside of those of us that, as you said earlier, that are in these leadership positions, that we've been called to this work for such a time as this. We gotta know that God is gonna use us as his workmen to do the work that he's already prepared beforehand for us to walk in it. So I'm gonna keep opening my big mouth. Sometimes people don't like when I do it, but I can't shut up. I done been through too much to shut up now. I've paid such a big price and cost for my community to be different, for my children to have different opportunities. I can't shut up now. I'll take a few more black eyes and bruises, and I'm going to get right back up. In closing, I was thinking about when we saw Michael Jordan on The Last Dance, and they talked about how great Michael was. But I focused in on how Michael would take a lot of elbows and hits and unnecessary shots along the way to the goal. And Michael, you know, ain't from the hood I'm from, because, you know, he only punched one person one time. You know, he just let them get away with a lot of the junk that they was doing to him on the way to the goal. And in this game of life, if you're going to be successful as a winner, as a leader, you got to be willing to take some hits and sacrifice yourself for the betterment of our community. So I'm here. In a few months, I'll be 55, a strong 55. I'm going to keep working out. I'm going to keep sounding my voice. And I plan on being around a long time until I see racism end, until I see things change for my babies in my communities, till I see my children not have to wonder how they're going to pay for college, where education, I believe, is a right in the Constitution, that they're able to get free education where they can succeed in life. It's up to us, y'all. And we got to stop letting people have dinner and lunch and smile with us and not raise these issues.
Yeah. Well, listen, let me there is nothing else to say. Let me tell, can I say this to both of you? I have a great deal of respect for both of you, and I truly thank God for you both. And just so you all know, when I reached out to both of them, it was not without hesitation did they say anything but yes, what time, and I'm doing it. And that's how much they care about their community. That's how much they care about kids. And I've seen both of them in action. So this is not a show. And if no one else has told you, both of you, and I mean this, you appreciate it. And I mean that. You're definitely appreciated. I want to read something to you because y'all took us there. We might as well end on this note because Yolanda put it in there, but I already had it up on my phone. That was Galatians 6:9 from the Message Bible. And it says that, so let's not allow ourselves to get fatigued doing good.
Yes.
At the right time, we will harvest a good crop if we don't give up or quit. Right now, therefore, every time we get the chance, let us work for the benefit of all, starting with the people closest to us in the community of faith.
Wow.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
I love y'all. Thank
Love
y'all
you
so
too,
much.
my brother.
My
Thank
sister.
y'all.
And you know,
sister.
love you guys.
Love you. Thank
All right.
y'all so much.
And stay safe. Thank you, Rep.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Anytime.
All right.